There's someone in a room next to me who is talking very loudly on their cell phone on speaker.
Yeah. Oh,
I can hear
nice.
it very clearly.
Nice that they're sharing it with you. Is it juicy?
Yeah, a little bit. It's very
Oh.
animated.
Okay. Why does somebody keep calling me on Skype? I'd like to know. It's getting a little irritating to me.
I don't know.
But we cannot hear any of that stuff, just to let you know.
Okay, good, because I can hear it, and it's very distracting.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
La 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 la. Hello,
All right,
everybody.
I'm going to do...
Oh, we're live. Hi, everybody.
We are.
Hi. I'm going to do Evernote on my phone.
I noticed that the Motu has only one earphone thing, whereas I tend to have two sets of earphones plugged in. A headset just for putting on and off quickly, and buds for fiddly.
Yeah.
So I've connected my headphone multiplier.
Do I need to get you a headphone amp?
No, I've got one.
Okay.
Which I bought for radio work,
okay.
but it serves just as well here. And I can also turn down
the volume a little bit.
No, the earphones, so that you don't get any leak, which is nice.
What'd you say, Liz? Oh, and somebody new in the chat room, John.
Oh, wow.
Provencher.
Quick, kick him off.
Yeah. Moderators, get rid of that new guy. We don't know him. He's from Seattle, but works at Moses Lake as a CFII. Well, welcome, John, to the community. I think you'll find most of these people that you're hanging out with right now are okay.
Most of them.
That's
I can't vouch for all of them.
Not all of them.
Is Moses Lake the one with the dry bit in the middle?
That's the Red Sea, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a different Moses Lake.
Different Moses. All right.
Main man Mike is asking about the headphone amp. I don't think there are a heck of a lot of them out there, and it's not a high-end headphone amp, Micah. It's a kind of basically like a powered headphone splitter that I have a few of, and they're made by Behringer. And
yeah, that's exactly what I got.
Yeah, it just plugs in, but it's better than just a straight splitter because you'll lose some of the volume if you just use like one of those Ys or tries. Is that what that would call that? Like 3?
Yeah, for some reason, when I had a splitter, I lost the feedback from the mic. It got sort of missed out somewhere in the audio. I don't know quite how that happened. But I got it back by using this. But I bought it so that I could share the headphones of my radio when I was demonstrating and teaching radio to the Scouts movement on their day when they do international communications. But it was a bit of a disappointment. It's not terribly well RF sealed. So I'm whacking 100 watts out of an aerial that's 30 feet away.
And, a little bit of interference.
Yeah, like you can say, we're all going, ah! Yes.
All right.
So not ideal, but there you go.
Here's the deal. We'll mention this before we start, that we are going to do another not a quasi. It's going to be another two-parter because Rick's schedule changed again. And he will not, big surprise, due to maintenance and weather delays, I think he said. Mm-hmm. But we're going to come back on again tonight, at least myself and Liz and maybe Steph, depends on what she's doing, with Rick tonight. So we'll send out notices. Liz will send something out after the show to kind of remind people that we're going to be doing another part tonight. So this part one will be about just under 2 hours. That's what we're shooting for anyway. So let me do some sounds just to make sure everything sounds okay. Let's see. How's the volume on that?
Sounds good.
Okay. And let's hear from Radio Roger.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
You said that's okay?
It's a bit loud in England.
Okay. Turn down the volume in England. Okay, the engineers are on it. And let's see, what else? Anything else? I got my recorder started. And Steph doesn't have one, so Nick, you don't need to worry about it.
Okay.
And microphone levels, everyone, or Liz, do we sound pretty much the same? Can Steph say something?
Can I say something? Am I really quiet?
Sounds like no. You're
It sounds
fine.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I just can't hear. I have no feedback for myself for some reason, which is unusual, and I'm not sure what I messed up.
Something happened there. You just increased in volume.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
I didn't
sounds
touch
okay, though.
anything. Okay.
Huh.
Wasn't
Yeah,
me.
it's odd because you're plugging right into the Scarlett, which would give you, feedback.
Yeah,
Is there a button there that says monitor that you can,
Yep. I've tried it in both positions.
and you still can't hear yourself?
No.
That's odd.
Yeah.
Very strange. Okay.
So it sounds like I'm not
Yeah,
sounds
you're
like
just
nothing's coming through my mic.
talking into the
Yeah.
something.
Can you plug
Good
into
avoid.
the? Oh no, that wouldn't work.
No, it doesn't work plugged into the microphone.
Well,
I don't know. As long as you guys can hear me, that's fine.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
What'd you say? What'd you say?
Wait, I'll put my mask back on, then you can really not hear me.
No, don't do that. Yeah, we got to go, Liz says, because she's afraid that you're going to lose all of your charge on your Surface. Where are you at now? 80?
75.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we
We should get started.
Yeah, let's go.
Sorry.
Okay. I'm thinking, I wonder if we should getting to know you like at the beginning.
Whatever you want to do. I'm going to double check and make sure I didn't bring it, but I'm pretty sure I left it plugged into the wall at home this morning.
Is it a USB-C?
No, it's like a
No.
Proprietary
Oh,
like
yeah,
magnetic.
so you're not going to be able to, yeah.
Well, I can probably find a replacement one. There's not going to be one here at the.
Yeah.
So I should probably have a secondary one anyway, because.
Well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call an audible here. Let's do getting to know us right away. We'll explain why, and then
Okay.
we'll hit the news, and then we'll have you for as long as we can have you.
And if I fade out, I'll just find another chord and join
And
you guys
then-
for part 2 tonight.
Yeah, perfect. All right,
Plan.
here we go. Liz, you ready? All right, here we go.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy episode 442.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from our side of the cockpit door, with your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 10th of September, 2020.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Put your light and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, a passenger walks onto the wing of a commercial jet in Ukraine saying she's too hot. There are flames outside a charter flight before an emergency landing in Hawaii. More news, your feedback, and today's plane tale, Little Nellie and her friends. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 442 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He is an Emmy Award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins, New York City. Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great feedback. My name's Captain Jeff. I'm a pilot, a captain at a major legacy carrier based in Atlanta, GA. And joining me from her mobile studio in somewhere in Salt Lake City, Utah, a skydiver, doctor, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and commercial multi-engine instrument-rated skydiving pilot, Dr. Steph.
Hey, Captain Jeff. And yes, somewhere in Salt Lake City is an app description for where I am right now.
Okay.
In Salt Lake City, somewhere.
Somewhere.
Here with you guys.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
We're happy you're with us as well. And also joining us from his studio in the English countryside, professional photographer, former RAAF fighter pilot, retired captain for an international airline based in London. It's Captain Nick.
Good evening, Jeff. Good evening, Steph. Great to be back on the show. Looking forward to a nice early finish tonight. For me, anyway.
We're looking forward to it as well. And we're going to pull an audible here. Normally we do this, I don't know, somewhere between the news and the feedback on the show. But today, we're going to go ahead and do Getting to Know Us right off the bat. And the reason for that is that wherever the heck Steph is in Salt Lake City, she is running out of, or depleting her battery on the Surface laptop that she's using right now. And so we're trying to make sure that we hear from her and understand what she's doing and such before she completely runs out of power.
So I'll keep it brief. Jeff asked earlier today if I had actually remembered to bring a microphone with me, and I, kind of gave him a snarky answer and said, of course, I'm a professional. Well, this professional did not manage to bring the charger for the Surface Pro laptop that I'm using to do the show on. So
I have to say I am impressed, though, that you brought your, not only did you bring your microphone, but also an interface.
I know.
You almost got 100%.
Almost. It was above 50% for sure.
It was above 50%. So we got that going for us. I should probably hit the 50% bell. There we go. So tell us then, while you still have power, what the heck are you doing in Salt Lake City?
I'll keep it brief. I was supposed to be running a race this weekend, a downhill marathon, and they made all these big claims about how, because it was going to be in the mountains and kind of remote, that they were going to be able to get away with actually having it, and they could social distance everyone, no problem. And then a month ago they went, oh, no, just kidding, it's canceled. So okay, but a lot of my family's out here and friends. I grew up out here, so I kept the trip anyway, and I'm here to just visit with them and take a couple days off of work. So really nice. I missed the huge windstorm they had here 2 days ago. I don't know if you guys heard about that. Basically like over 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts.
Wow. Trees
down everywhere, especially like the northern part of Salt Lake Valley and just north of Salt Lake City. So lots of cleanup in progress at the moment, but very nice out today. It's like 70 something degrees and sunny, and it's just going to get hotter through the weekend until I come home.
I'm sorry, you may have just said something about it, and I may have missed it because I was listening to Liz talking sweet things into my ear. Did you say that they did get some snow there, or not?
There was briefly snow, but that really wasn't. It wasn't so much it was a storm without a lot of precipitation, mostly wind. Like very, very high sustained, like Category 2 hurricane force winds for a period of time. Yeah.
Well, not too far away from where you are in the Rockies and the Denver area. Apparently, they got some snow.
Oh yeah, I was flying here this morning, and there was plenty of snow in the mountains on the way over.
Nice.
Yeah, it was very pretty.
An early ski season, perhaps?
Hopefully they can actually be open, and I don't know. We'll just need helmets with like full face masks, and problem solved.
There you go.
The issue. But
Steph, did you say the downhill marathon?
A downhill, yeah. So it starts all the way up in the mountains, and it finishes down in the valley. So you lose like over 5,000 feet of elevation.
Wow. Is that
over
a bit hard on the calves? I mean,
it's very hard on your quads and your shins and your toenails. But it's very fast.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, but exercising muscles that don't normally work that way.
Well, I'll tell you what, I got here, I was a little bit of a time crunch anyway getting here. I knew we were starting kind of close to the time I was arriving. So I got here, got set up, kind of shoved a bunch of food in my mouth because I was really hungry and starving. And then I realized I didn't have any beer. So I had to run down the street to the Whole Foods to get a 6-pack of beer. And just the down the street and back, I'm like, ugh, elevation. Not used to it.
Not used to it, right? Yeah, at least you don't have any humidity though, right?
No humidity. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Very little. Yeah, it's nice.
I bet it's very nice.
Yeah. So other than that, it's been a kind gosh, it was kind of a busy weekend with the holiday. I actually did some skydiving. I got current jumping out of an airplane, so that was fun.
Excellent.
And then a bunch of flying for the weekend.
Now,
so
you didn't jump out of the airplane that you were actually piloting at the time, right?
I was not piloting it at the
Okay,
time. No,
good,
there was
good.
someone else flying it. So, yeah.
What,
But
one of the jumpers who went, hang on a minute.
I don't know anything about flying. Oh, you do fine.
I think
fine.
the vast majority of the pilots there have skydiving experience. So, someone of
Interesting.
theirs. But-
Excellent.
And I got to talk with one half of Opposing Bases on frequency for real this week too. So
Very
it was
good.
fun.
The top half or the bottom half?
I'm not sure how they consider that, but
Maybe the left or the right.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
the Romeo Hotel half. So
Yes. Very cool.
That was very fun.
Well, he actually mentioned it in their podcast when they
I-
recorded on Tuesday.
I
actually.
heard that. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, ooh, I already knew that because Steph let us know that she was able to
The insider
communicate.
info.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Anything else?
I don't know. I was going to keep it kind of concise, and I think that
Okay.
covers most of the things. I had a very
Excellent.
nice Labor Day on the water as well.
Oh, very,
Just
very nice. Yeah.
Relaxing.
Okay. Excellent. Captain Nick, have you been shining your balls, sir?
Yes, I have. I've been polishing them with a very nice wax, and they look very shiny now.
Oh, I bet. And of course, we're talking about the bowling balls, right? Is that what you
Well,
call
we
them?
just call them bowls.
Bowls. Okay.
They're not bowling. Bowling balls are the sort of 9-pin things you get. But,
Yeah. Okay.
Is it 10-pin? 10-pin. 10-pin ball. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a
ours is
bunch.
just bowl. Yeah, I'm in a new club this year, and they've been very well organized around COVID. So they've run their full gambit of competitions, and so I competed in several and came away with some silver. So very pleased about that. With another fine chap won the men's. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. I mean,
On
you're
the
like
men's
the grand
pairs.
champion or something like that, right?
Yeah, the men's singles is considered the club champion, and I was lucky enough to beat their last year's winner in a very tight match. Actually, it was down to first to 21, so he had 20, I had 19, and so if I hadn't have won the last end by 2 shots, he would have got in there. But no, it was good, and a very nice club, so I'm pleased I joined them.
So, and I'm sure that the person that you beat last year's champion, I'm sure he's very happy that you're there.
Yeah,
This guy.
he is actually a very nice bloke. So, but he's a lot younger than me. So, he's a good bowler. I say that with all humility.
Yes. As he takes away the trophy.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes. Yeah, I don't even see your name on this, mate.
So not only did you do spectacularly with your bowling skills, but you also had a special day on yesterday?
It was. Yeah, I became an old age pensioner. So now I'm really an old pilot. So absolutely. Yeah, it was my 66th. So I'm 2/3 of the beast.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Oh, yes, I do see that.
Yes.
And
I've
now
only got
it's all-
2 6s, not 3.
It's
Yeah.
all
Not 3.
It's all actually making a lot of sense when you think about it. Now that I'm
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I was just thinking about, flying career, etc. And I was wondering how many times I'd actually flown on my birthday. And so I took a little time, went back into the logbook, and I found out the first time that I flew on my birthday was in 1973 when I was flying solo out of RAF Tangmere in Whiskey Echo 987, and the flight lasted a full 9 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Not because I was particularly bad, but because I was in a glider, winch launch, and there wasn't a lot of lift around. So I just did a few turns in a thermal and then came back. So
Only 9 minutes. That's almost a little embarrassing, really.
Well, most of the flights are about 3 minutes if you think about it. But
That's true.
Well, modern gliders. We only get
we're talking about flying now. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I understand.
Wow.
Steph, speak to him.
I'm taking notes.
Liz, shout in his ear.
Well, Liz is laughing in my ear. Is what she's doing.
Very good, very good. So that was back in 1973. So that kind of dates me a little. 1980, I was airborne on my birthday with Bonzo in the back seat, a great old friend of mine, and we intercepted 2 Bear Deltas that day. Did 2 hours 20. Did various other trips in the Air Force. I did a couple in Australia where I was flying in 88. I flew an F-18 out of Malaysia. I was temporarily based at Royal Malaysian Air Force Base Butterworth, and we were on an air defense exercise. And I remember because they had an Australian fighter controller, which is just the military version of an air traffic controller, except they try and put aircraft together rather than keep them apart. And he'd been controlling us most of the afternoon. And as we headed back, he came up on guard and shouted, "Nick, this is God on guard. Happy birthday."
Oh, nice.
So I got a happy birthday from God, which I thought was extremely nice. Not many people can say that.
I was going to say, not many people can say that.
Exactly. And I didn't know God kept guard frequency open for himself whenever he wanted. And then I did a couple of A340 trips to Johannesburg and a couple of Miamis on my birthday. So all told, I've spent more than 38 hours and 24 minutes airborne on my birthday. And considering your birthday only lasts 24 hours, I'm just going, well, just that. Can you do that? But apparently you can.
You have more than one birthday.
That's probably true.
Yeah. So
well,
interesting fact. Yeah. I can't top that. Not that I'm trying to. But interesting fact that I earned my private pilot certificate on my birthday.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
9 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Wow. When you were 11.
Yes, exactly.
I was just
they had to make an exception for me. But usually it's 17, but
it's brilliant.
Very
anyway,
cool.
that's been my week. I would have a nice new birthday present to show you, but sadly, Canon have not been able to produce enough Canon R5 cameras. So that was going to be my birthday gift from Jilly, but there are none to be had right now because there are very few available anywhere in the world. So if you've bought one, you're very lucky. I can't get hold of one.
Well, when you do, it'll be a nice belated birthday gift, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very nice.
How about you, anyway, Jeff?
Well, I'm not looking for the Canon A5 or whatever you called it, R5. But not a heck of a lot going on, actually. I've been a Class B bachelor here in the house. My wife and youngest daughter went to the beach, Hilton Head Island. They're going to be coming back tomorrow. So it's been interesting having the house to myself this week. And I guess I'll be scrambling to try to clean things up and make it look like, nothing happened while they were gone. Whatever that means. Let's see. Yeah, not a lot, actually. It was a very quiet Labor Day for me. Didn't get to spend any time in the lake because there is no lake here, at least at my house. But I do get to meet up with one of the APG community members tomorrow at the Atlanta International Airport. Greg Peterson, the Big Ass Fan Company guy, is going to be going through Atlanta, I think on the way out to Los Angeles to do some plane spotting with some friends. And so I'm going to meet up with him and have some coffee and get to chat with him for a bit before he heads off for LA. And
that'll be nice.
Yeah. And then also tomorrow is the 19th anniversary of September 11th, 2001. I think if I did my math correctly. And so that's something that we should all think about. And maybe next year we can do something special for the 20th anniversary of September 11th. We'll probably start thinking about that soon.
Yeah, I wonder if it's worth putting together a special plain tale or something.
I think it might be, absolutely. Yeah. And another person that is close to our hearts, Colonel Jeff, and Steph and I got a chance to be on his last 2 flights of his airline career. He celebrated his 65th birthday on, Saturday, I think, the 5th of September. So happy birthday again, Colonel Jeff. And and I thought of Colonel Jeff because of the fact that he sent that letter in about September 11th, many years ago. And so perhaps that can be part of that episode as well. We'll reread the letter that Jeff sends out every year. And that is all that I can think of. We are doing the show again as a 2-parter. So later in the show, after the plain tale, we'll sort of wrap up part 1, and then we'll be hopefully talking with Miami Rick somewhere in Korea again. So there you go. And with that, I think it's a good time for us to head on over to the Coffee Fund. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Johnny, how much more coffee? No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. The Coffee Fund, that's the Jeff Smith who did the APG theme song for the show. And he recorded this special version of the Java Jive for us as well. He's singing about coffee because that's what we call the thing, the mechanism that folks can support us financially. You'll note that we don't have any ads on the show, and that's because we are supported by the community on a value for value kind of a proposition. And so if you get value from the show, please consider sending us some value in return, if you don't mind. And a couple different ways you can do that. One is the Coffee Fund Classic method, and Mazuz Karim sent us another nice donation via the Classic method. And we also have a Patreon account, patreon.com/airlinepilotguy. And that's a way you can kind of pledge a certain amount per episode. And since the last show, Ham Radio Jim, you've heard of him because he sends us a lot of feedback. He increased his Patreon level to executive producer. So thank you very much, Ham Radio Jim, for that. If you want to learn more about the Coffee Fund, please head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee.
Stand by for news.
Status report on the battery level stuff. You're muted.
There's not enough for a microphone to work.
It's not good.
It's not good. Okay. Well, is there anything here on the news you would like for us to cover first? You know what? Since you're still here with us, barely, let's go to E. Let's start off with this. And why don't we, I'm sorry, Liz, false alarm. The little bit of setup here, this is some video that we're going to play that is taken from inside a Cessna 172M Skyhawk on the 24th of August. And it occurred at Toronto's Buttonville Municipal Airport, Charlie Yankee Kilo Zulu, Ontario, Canada, not far from where Liz lives. And now, why don't we play the video?
Ouch.
Yeah. So,
Ouch.
You must, if you're listening to the audio version, look in the show notes for this. You may have already seen this YouTube video. And the student pilot was doing some circuits, some practice touch and goes, and he touched down. Looked like a pretty decent landing to me. And then the airplane started to kind of drift a little bit to the left. And what would the normal reaction be, Steph, if the airplane started drifting a little bit left of center line on your landing rollout?
Yeah, you'd correct that with rudder.
Yeah, a little bit of right rudder?
A little bit of right rudder.
Yeah. And then it doesn't look to me like he did that. Or maybe he did. And then
I think he did, and he never
took it out.
I think he never stopped putting in right rudder. And then also, or maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and they put the power.
Chance he dabbed the brakes as well.
He might have grabbed the brake on that right side because it turned
pushing
pretty quick.
the right rudder forward. He might have pushed on the brake and spun the aircraft quite hard to the right.
But at the same time, he reached for the throttle control.
It almost seemed like he was just going through the motion of doing the touch and go, right? So you touch down, and then you go again. So he pushed the power forward.
All the way in, right? Which was like full forward, full power.
Yep.
And then I'm thinking, well, maybe he's thinking, okay, this is a Bach landing, so I'll just get this thing up in the air and fly away, and I'll give this another try. But it didn't work out that way. The airplane continued to, instead of going off to the left side, it went pretty rapidly, as Steph said, off to the right, and then you can see it going over some grass and some bumps between the runway and the taxiway. It looks like it probably went over a taxiway. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the airport diagram. And then back down, and then all of a sudden you're starting to see some hangars coming into view in the distance, and then rapidly approaching one of the hangars. And one of the interesting things, and I don't mean to make fun of it or make light of it, because when you're new to flying, sometimes it's hard to kind of, we all remember first time we're in an airplane and we're trying to taxi the airplane, we automatically with the control yoke start turning it like a steering wheel. Well, that's not the way you steer an airplane on the ground. You use your rudder pedals, especially this particular type of airplane. And he was like, he had it full to the right, hard over to the right. In fact, toward the end, before he hits the hangar, he actually grabs it with his other hand. So both hands full, I don't know,
to
full
the
deflection.
Left, to the right?
To the right.
To the right. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
to the right. And,
trying to get it.
Try not to hit the hangar. And of course, he did hit the hangar. Now, miraculously, he only had minor injuries. Now, I can't say the same for the airplane or the hangar. Probably the hangar did okay, but the airplane, I think, was pretty much substantially damaged and probably will have to be a write-off, but I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think he ever took his hand off the throttle full forward either, though.
He did.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
I have to watch it a little closer.
Eventually, when he put both hands on the yoke.
Let's watch it one more time.
He never pulled back on that.
He never pulled it back.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can unmute yourself if you want to say something while we're watching this. I'm talking to the crew. Okay. So he's got his hand on the throttle.
I'm hearing a little squealing because I'm thinking that might be the right brake.
The brakes are scrubbing. And he's got full power. Yeah. And so he did kind of reach up again. And I thought maybe he reached up to pull the power off, but no, he just reached up to push it, make sure it was all the way in, I think, toward the end.
I'm going to make this thing fly.
Yeah, it never did.
No, but I agree with you, Nick. I think I do hear brakes there, or it's like squealing. Like,
yeah,
I just thought it was like just because it was such a sharp turn to the right. Too. That it was just like the tires just scrubbing on the runway, going sideways.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But I do, like you said, Joe, I feel so sorry for him because he's a student, for heaven's sake. Nothing is coming naturally to him.
No.
He's having to think about every movement he does. And when he gets in a situation where things are happening too fast and he's probably in a little bit of a panic mode, he's just going back to what comes naturally. And for years, he's flown a car. So.
Yeah. Steve in the chat room says, our live audience, so if you do not turn the yoke like a steering wheel, does that mean that the horn button's not in the middle of the yoke? Yeah. No, Steve.
It's like a
we all
it's
know
like
the
a
whole...
train or a
And I have a feeling that Steve knows the answer to that. He's just trying to be funny. But it is pretty funny, though. Thank you, Steve, for that.
No, I feel bad for this guy.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm wondering if that's going to hinder his confidence and his desire to proceed with more flight training. I hope that this doesn't affect him too negatively, psychologically.
Well, when I was learning, one of our guys, because I did it on a course that was paid for, it was a scholarship. And there were a number of other guys doing the same scholarship at the same flying school. And one of the guys smashed the nose wheel on landing in the Cessna 150 and buckled it under the fuselage, and of course broke the prop and probably damaged the engine. And everyone went, ooh. But I think if you've got good instructors and they work with the student, they can give you your confidence back, and they just make the points we have that, hey, this is a learning process. Not everyone gets it right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, he didn't drive it into a hanger. I mean, the guy, to be truthful, the guy could so easily have killed himself. Perhaps he...
Or, I mean, anyone else that had been,
Oh, yes. Yeah,
around.
there could have been some old lady passing the hangar,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, if it was just a little bit to the left, he kind of hit... kind of
corner,
smacked the...
right,
if you hit the corner or even the
yes.
broad side of the other side of the hangar, I mean, that would have probably been a completely different story.
Yep. He'd have ended up with that engine in his lap, probably.
Yep.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think when I was doing my private pilot training, the policy was that students really weren't supposed to be doing touch and goes solo. So if you were going to be doing practice, anything in the pattern, it was full stop, taxi back, if you didn't have an instructor with you. So
yeah, that rings a bell with me, although it was many years ago. I think you needed
I think
they
didn't want us, oversaturated with, okay, you're on the ground and now you got to get your flaps and your carb, your power, and maintain center line. That's when you're new, that's a lot.
Unfortunately, I think we just did harm to someone in the live audience's confidence. She says, whatever, Rebecca says, whatever aspirations I have ever had to take lessons have just vanished. I'm sorry.
Well, you'll be fine while you're taking lessons, Rebecca, because there'll be an instructor beside you.
Right.
Just don't ever go solo, okay?
Then you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm glad we got that covered before Steph lost all of her power. Let's jump. What do you think, Liz? What would be another good one to do while Steph is still with us? Okay. Let's do the C, woman walking onto the airplane wing.
This was Steph today, wasn't it? Because she...
yeah, you were flying to... Oh, let's see.
Only
see
just had enough time.
Let's play the video, see if we can recognize Steph. Okay. All right. So, looks like Steph had her hair in a bun, all up in a... I've seen this hairstyle on Steph before, I think.
Yeah.
Relaxing on the wing, because I think it was kind of hot inside the airplane. It looks like somebody is trying to get her to come back inside and join the rest of the passengers on the
we're
airplane.
having lots of fun in here.
So it's a 737. They have the overwing exit doors that actually kind of pop up and are hinged from the top. Most overwing exits, the doors will actually completely come apart, and depending on the airplane, either you put it inside and then everybody evacuates, or you throw it outside the airplane. Again, I think it's kind of model dependent. But anyways, the article says an overheated mum who decided, by the way, this is from thesun.co.uk, an overheated mum who decided to stroll along a plane's wing to cool off has been blacklisted by fuming officials. Ukraine International Airlines said the woman opened the emergency exit and went on to its wing moments after landing at Kiev after coming in from Turkey. The mom of two strolled along the plane's wing after touchdown in Ukraine's capital, Kiev, And let's see. Videos show her casually strolling along the wing before climbing back inside the cabin. A returning holidaymaker told reporters that the aircraft landed and almost all the passengers got off. She walked almost all the way from the tail to the emergency exit row, opened the door, and went out. I guess she was just trying to find a way to cool off. Yeah. Left her children in the airplane. So I guess her intent was, to go back into the airplane because
I'm just going to step out here for a moment.
Yeah.
Someone watch my kids.
Yeah. If you don't mind, keep your eye on them.
Like 3 minutes tops.
They can be trouble.
It's hot in here, and I'm hot.
What are you going to do? You get hot.
So here was my question, but it says right here, tests showed she was neither drunk nor on drugs.
Yeah.
She was just
interesting.
hot.
Yeah. And apparently Ukraine International Airlines said, you're not going to fly on our airline ever again. Thank you very much. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Get a fan, Liz says. Get a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make them. They're USB
one of those little
rechargeable
personal ones, like attached to a little water bottle so you can mist yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Your fellow passengers may not appreciate that on an airplane, but
yeah. They probably didn't appreciate what she did either, though, on this particular flight.
So they had doctors look at her, but apparently they failed to get an adequate response for the breach. So she couldn't properly explain herself, it appears.
They accused her of setting a poor parental example.
Poor parental example. But, she's not the only one.
Kind of putting it mildly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Kids, see what your mom just did? Don't do that.
Don't do that. That's not the way to go.
Not a good idea. All right. Let's jump up to A. This is a final report. This is from the Aviation Herald. A final report released by the Iranian AIB, Air Accident Investigation Board, on an event that we talked about earlier this year. This occurred on January 27th of this year. McDonnell Douglas MD-83, a Caspian Airlines model or version, performing flight 6936 from Tehran's, how do you pronounce that? Matarabad? To Mashhad, Iran, with 136 passengers and 8 crew, landed on Mashhar's runway 13. Landing distance available is 2,695 meters or 8,840 feet. Kind of a typical length of a runway for landing.
It was Mehrabad. I can't do that thing.
Yeah.
Mehrabad, I think.
Okay. Let's see. It was about 7:50 local time, but they overran the end of the runway, broke through the airport perimeter fence, and came to a stop on the expressway. About 170.
You sound like a cat.
I'll just apologize in advance to anyone who actually knows how to pronounce that.
To our
or
Iranian,
if you're from that city.
Our vast Iranian
listeners. Yeah, I'm sure we have some there.
Send your feedback to I'm offended at
yes.com. And I'll happily get some staff on that. See if we can fix that for you. So anyway, it came to a rest on the expressway about 170 meters past the end of the runway with all gear collapsed. The aircraft was evacuated while emergency services began to respond. You'll remember when we covered this, we were kind of saying, they're walking around trying to find baggage claim out there on the road. Could have gone a lot worse, and we have talked about incidents where overruns have resulted in not so great endings for passengers and pilots. But in this case, I don't believe anybody was injured. I have to take a quick look here, but let me read the final report. Aircraft Accident Investigation Board determines that the probable causes of this accident were the pilot's failures below. Poor decision-making for acceptance of the risk of a high-speed landing, an unstabilized approach, ding, 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 ding. We hear that so often, don't we, on these excursions and overruns. Here, where's my bell? Okay. Poor CRM in the cockpit, and poor judgment in not accomplishing a go-around while performing an unstabilized approach. Contributing factors, loading of 5 tons of extra fuel, which increased the landing distance required. The decision to make a landing on runway 13 with a tailwind. All these things are starting to stack up, aren't they? Inability of the co-pilot, the pilot monitoring, to take control of the aircraft and proper action to execute a go-around. The captain had a lot of time in his career, 64 years old, air transport pilot license, 18,430 hours total, 7,759 hours on type. He was the pilot flying. The first officer, 28 years old, commercial pilot license, 300 hours total. So not a lot of experience in time, was the pilot monitoring.
I mean, I can see why he didn't take control from the captain. I mean,
yeah,
but
he gained a lot of experience on this very flight.
He really did. Yeah, experience that he did not want to have. The transcript quoted in the report shows 8 sync rate GPWS, ground proximity warning system, callouts between 1,000 feet and 500 feet above ground. 8 in that time span. Wow, I didn't even know you could get that many between 1,000
they even have
and
one between 40 and 20 feet. It went 40, sync rate, 20, 10.
That's no good. Yeah,
that's not good.
That's no good. Now, also, before that, below, right around 400, they got the sync rate, pull up, pull up, pull up.
Oh, God.
Hello, what are you doing? Radar data showed the aircraft at 2,700 feet MSL at 249 knots over the ground. So the elevation of the airport, 18 feet. So approximately 2,700 feet above the ground. They were still at basically 250 knots, about 3 nautical miles before the runway threshold. Yeah. Wow, that's... Yeah, no,
we should be at VREF already. And you should be about 900 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So they're well outside
Way.
Anything that is could vaguely be considered a stabilized approach.
Exactly. Aircraft touchdown nose gear first. Big surprise.
Ouch.
At 171 knots indicated. Again, the approach
40
reference
knots
was
fast.
135, or 131 actually. Yeah, 40 knots fast. 1,695 meters past the runway threshold. 1.22 G loading on the nose wheel.
It's not too bad, is it? I just quite.
I would have expected worse, actually.
All he means is it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Right?
The average rate of descent in the last 1,000 feet was 1,580 feet per minute.
Oh,
now, most airlines these days will have a stabilized approach criteria saying no more than 1,000 feet per minute at that point. And it should be usually around, 700, 800 feet per minute, depending on your speed. The gear proximity switch went into ground mode briefly into airborne mode before returning to ground mode. A bounce thus was likely. And no injuries occurred. Okay, that's what I thought. The aircraft, however, received so substantial damage that the AIB assessed the aircraft as destroyed. Yeah. Another mad dog bites the dust. So now I really enjoyed the comments. Again, this is from the Aviation Herald. Savant says, and this is how you bypass customs. And then maybe as good is from Human. He says, Iran has one of the best pilots of the world, and that's why he could land safely in the middle of the street without anyone getting hurt or airplane catching fire. Well done. I don't think this person that made that comment actually was joking around. I think that maybe they thought that this was actually a really, really good job. Yeah, very proud of his Iranian piloting heritage or something. I don't know.
That's a worry.
Yeah, that is a big worry. But there you go. So yeah, unstabilized approaches, not good.
Yeah, sadly, poor piloting skills seem to be a theme in this week's news.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it does get better. Maybe, or as Liz says, or maybe worse.
Yeah.
Why don't we, again, while we still have Steph, might be interesting to hear her input as well on this. Item D. Spanish investigators have detailed an unusual incident in which a Boeing 737-500 crew struggled to control the aircraft after the autopilots failed, even though all the instruments needed to operate the flight remained fully functional. Lithuanian carrier Klasjet, the aircraft departed Madrid Barajas for Kaunas on 5 April last year with the captain. I don't know, is somebody laughing at my pronunciation?
No, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Okay. Kaunas? I actually looked it up.
Kaunas?
You can go to several places on YouTube to kind of get people saying the pronunciation, and pretty much every possible way to pronounce this word is on it.
So there's zero standardization of it.
No.
Just make it up.
Not really sure exactly. Yeah.
And this is like a charter operation, isn't it? Maybe?
Not sure.
I could be wrong.
I don't know if it's a scheduled air carrier or a charter. Honestly, I don't know. Class jet, I'm not sure if that's a scheduled carrier or not. But anyway, let's see. They left Madrid for that K-word city on 5 April last year with the captain's autopilot inoperative, a situation permitted under minimum equipment list regulations. But the first officer's autopilot also failed some 2 minutes after takeoff. Spanish investigation authority CIAIAC stresses that the loss of the autopilots did not prevent proceeding with the flight in instrument conditions because all the instruments required to conduct the service were available to the crew at all times. These included the attitude indicator, altimeter, rate of climb indicator, compass, bank indicator, engine instruments, and other systems. So those listening to the show know, if you have an instrument rating or you're working on it or you know anything at all about instrument flying, that those are your basic instrument references for your instrument cross-check. The inquiry also points out that the cockpit crew comprised instrument-rated pilots with considerable experience.
In quotes.
Yeah, in quotes, considerable experience. A captain with 4,300 hours on type, not bad, who also served as an instructor, while the first officer had about 2,000 hours. The investigative authority found that despite this, the pilots experienced, quote, problems operating the aircraft. Although the crew declared an emergency, they did not specify the difficulty. And then there's a little photo here of the track of the airplane. They're all over the place. It's really, we're laughing, but it's really not funny.
It looks like they traced a roller coaster around.
It does look like a roller coaster.
What are you doing?
I'm glad I was not aboard that airplane as a passenger. Investigators detailed the meandering flight path of the 737 after its autopilot failure. Flight data recorder information shows variations in altitude between 4,000 and 5,000 feet shortly before the aircraft, which had departed runway 14 left, started turning north. The pitch began to vary, reaching attitudes as high as 11 degrees nose down. Yikes.
Ouch.
Huh?
Yeah, reaching attitudes as low as 11 degrees. But in an airliner, you very rarely see anything more than 1 or 2 degrees below the horizon line in normal conditions. Even when you're flying a instrument landing system, precision approach, your pitch may be right at the horizon line, maybe 1 or 2 degrees nose above that. Some airplanes like the CRJ, it's going to be a little bit nose low, but not 11 degrees. Come on. That's crazy. Anyway, the crew turned left to intercept Madrid's runway 18 left localizer, but the inquiry says the turn was too wide. Unable to complete the intercept from the left, and with difficulties maintaining the correct altitude and position with respect to the localizer and glide slope, the crew carried out a go-around at about 3,300 feet. The controller asked if they had problems with the speed, since he did not know the nature of their emergency, but the crew again requested vectors to land, says the inquiry. After the go-around, the 737 headed east, then north. The inquiry states that the aircraft needed to increase altitude as it was operating at 4,400 feet and entering an area with a 6,700 foot minimum. The controller observed that it was not doing so and twice ordered the crew to climb, but the pilots did not carry out this instruction. The aircraft turned left towards the west while changing altitude noticeably, says the inquiry. It began climbing from around 5,000 feet to reach nearly 5,800 feet as it continued to turn to the southwest in preparation for a second approach. It subsequently intercepted the localizer 11 nautical miles out at 4,300 feet, but the pilots had not acquired visual contact with the runway at 8 nautical miles. The crew was still having problems maintaining the ILS localizer and glide slope, says the inquiry. By the time the aircraft reached 2.5 nautical miles distance, the controllers realized it had executed another go-around at around 2,600 feet. Having conducted 2 failed attempts at landing, the aircraft diverted to Getafe Air Base. It climbed to just over 7,860 feet, its highest point during the whole flight, and then began to descend on a heading for runway 23. While there were minor variations in speed and heading during this descent, the aircraft started to climb again while deviating to the right, according to the flight data recording. It entered a right-hand circle south of the runway at altitudes between 6,688 feet and 6,440 feet, then proceeded to turn north for a right-hand downwind leg before landing on runway 23 about 35 minutes after its departure from Madrid. None of the 57 passengers and 8 crew members were injured, and the aircraft was undamaged. Although the cockpit voice recorder was retrieved and its data downloaded, it had not captured audio information from the flight. The inquiry has not been able to determine why.
Interesting.
Not suspicious. The flight data recorder information, though, clearly showed that the crew had considerable problems maintaining basic flight parameters, including altitude, airspeed, and heading, particularly during turns. The problems maintaining the basic flight parameters due to the absence of automatic control systems indicates that neither the decision-making nor the cooperation between the crew were adequate. Poor weather conditions complicated the situation. It adds with turbulence and cloud cover between 2,000 and 4,000 feet around Madrid. This prevented the crew from making a safe visual approach, and they probably did not have the runway in sight, it states. The aircraft was diverted not because the weather was better at Getafe, but because air traffic control believed a third landing attempt would pose a safety risk and generate delay. They were watching after themselves and thinking, let's get these people away.
We can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
Can you just please go somewhere else and fart around for a while? Not here. Yeah.
ClassJet carried out its own probe into the event, noting several aspects in its findings which the Spanish investigators might have addressed with safety recommendations. Given these findings, the inquiry does not believe any further recommendations are necessary. I hope that they recommended that these people not ever fly an airplane with passengers again.
Yeah. Are we sure they had licenses that actually...
It says
they did, and that they had, what was it? Considerable experience, in quotes.
Yeah. I don't know why they put
anytime there's like
quotation
unnecessary
marks.
quotations, it makes me very suspicious.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they're trying to say there.
I don't know really what to
just
say about
makes
this.
me
Like, it's
cry a
very,
bit.
it's scary.
Very.
If you have to rely on hand flying the aircraft without an autopilot in instrument conditions, which is something you should just be prepared to do anyway.
Yeah, that's why the FAA, the NTSB, EASA, and all the safety agencies around the world are always stressing that we as pilots should be practicing our manual flying skills so that, guess what, if the autopilot doesn't work, no problem, you fly the airplane like you were, trained to do. However, even at big major U.S. airlines, even though, they put out memos and say, we recommend that you do this when it's appropriate just to keep up your skills. In my own anecdotal experience has shown that it very rarely happens. And that's scary. And for those of you who have listened to the show, know that this is like an unending thing that I'm concerned about, actually.
Well, and we're still talking about perishable skills here. So if you're not using and practicing those things, it becomes very difficult to use them when you have to use them. It's one thing to practice when appropriate. It's another to be forced into doing something when you haven't even thought about doing it in a long time.
And granted, this is probably, if you were going to take a slice of the pie of how many pilots are in this kind of condition or situation, it's probably a very, very, very small number of people. But I think that sadly it's growing in number as time goes on, and our reliance on automation is more and more and more. And even the way we're training people, and I've seen it myself in my over 30 years of flying, of the emphasis on using automation almost exclusively. From the very beginning, when you were in a simulator, you were mostly hand flying the airplane throughout the entire simulator period. And now it's like they look at you like there's something wrong with you if you don't immediately put automation on the airplane. They kind of emphasize that. Yes, it is one of my pet peeves. Yes. And Liz is asking if that's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah. So Neil was asking about it in the chat room too. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's. I'm sure it's being done for several reasons. One is for passenger comfort, so things are a little bit smoother. One is for just from an operational standpoint. One is for really just generally trying to decrease workload for pilots that can pay attention to everything that's going on, I suppose. Offload a little bit, but I think then you start to foster this dependence or reliance on it if that's how you're operating every single time.
It is a two-edged sword for sure.
Yeah.
And I can see why, you'd want us to mostly use automation, but you can't use it exclusively because, as Steph said, it's a perishable skill, and you have to practice it. But again, I'm preaching to the choir.
I feel sorry for all those 737 pilots out there who can fly properly, who see this kind of thing and go, "What? Why are these people getting jobs when I'm currently out of work? I could do their jobs so much better than they're doing."
Yep.
It's a worry.
It is a worry. And again, if you're out there and you're not a pilot and you're at all have anxiety at all about getting on airplanes and expecting or thinking that you might kind of experience pilots with this lack of skill, this is a very, very rare thing. So don't worry. This is, most of us know what we're doing and have skills when the automation doesn't work. But anyway, this was just something that you just look at and shake your head and go, I don't know what to say about this. Really don't know what to say.
Yeah. I mean, just last thing, my view is the pilot skill should be the primary skill set, and the automation is there to back up what the pilots need to do.
Right. I don't think you're going to get an argument from any of us, Steph, on that. Okay. And of course, in your world of flying, Steph, being a newly checked out skydiving pilot, how's the automation system on that Kodiak?
Oh, it's great, actually. The autopilot works fantastic.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, it really does.
I was kind of saying that with tongue in cheek because I thought maybe it didn't have an autopilot.
No, this aircraft actually does, and it actually works. And you could fly an entire jump run on it, but
really,
yeah. But why? That's no.
But I bet you all don't.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, only when it's like lunchtime and you're like, I'm going to eat this sandwich here for a few minutes.
Right. Yeah. That's just as we mentioned, it's a tool. There's a reason. We have we're not going to fly. Nick's not going to fly a 9-hour flight from Europe to the States, hand flying it. That's crazy unless you had to. And thankfully, Nick and people like him have the skills to do that if necessary, if they had to.
Yeah, but you don't really want to have to sit and nurse an airplane. I mean, yeah, it's pretty tedious just flying straight and level.
It is. All right. Oh, excuse me.
More tea, Vicar.
Yeah, why don't we save the last two items in here for later? I'm sorry, Liz? Okay. We'll save B and F for part 2 tonight. Why don't we just quickly, again, I keep feeling like I'm going to look up and see Steph's video completely gone.
Yeah, it's going to happen here shortly. I've got 8 minutes of battery remaining.
Oh, okay. Let's hurry. Yeah. Oh, hang on. Let's start off our feedback, part 1, with item 1 from David. And David is writing this mostly for Nick. So I'm going to let you take over, Nick.
Oh, okay, sure. David says, hi, Nick. I've been a long-time listener and no-time contributor. I used to have a long commute to work and would listen to the podcast on my MP3 player, but since lockdown and the now only 15-minute commute to my current job, I've fallen way down on episodes, and I'm only on January's episodes. So I'll have to put in a good effort to catch up. You certainly will, old chap. I have had a long time interest in aviation. Started really when I was a kid, and we lived in South Harrow. It's north part of London, under the flight path into RAF Northolt, which is, funny enough, also in the north part of London. When I was 5 years old, a Pan Am 707 landed at Northolt by mistake. Oops.
Oopsie.
Yeah. Well, the runway's kind of in the same direction as Heathrow. But they sort of both in London-ish, but one's to the north and the other one's to the west, and they're about 15 miles apart. Anyway, Dad took me down to see it, as he had a motorbike with a sidecar. Oh, how fantastic. They were taking the seats out at the time, I'm guessing, Jeff, to reduce the weight so that they could get it off again.
Wow.
After that, they put no on the gasometer. I think they're assuming it was NO rather than no, standing for Northolt, and LH on the Southall one. So LH would have been for London Heathrow. I don't know if you've done a plain tale on that. Well, no, I haven't actually, because I didn't know it had happened. And I did know that they wrote on the gasometers. Now, I don't know if you have gasometers in America.
Don't know what that is.
All right. We used to call them treacle tins. They're like a huge, great big tin, which is in a sort of a scaffolding frame. And that rises up until this, what looks like sort of half a tin, is about 40 or 50 feet into the air, and it's filled with gas, coal gas or natural gas or whatever, and then they let weight pressurize the gas, and that distributes it to all the households. So the gasometers were everywhere, and they were literally to provide gas pressure. Anyway, there's a big one by Heathrow, and for as long as I remembered, they had written Heathrow, not just LH, but they'd actually written in big white letters Heathrow around it. Eventually, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, Adam might know, I think that fell by the wayside. I don't know if they still have it there. But anyway, I digress. I don't know if you've done a plain tale on that. When at school, I was to go into the ATC, and I was not the Air Training Corps, I think Air Traffic Control. And I was in a youth cadet scheme at Heathrow and used to do things in the radar and the tower. I used to do my plane spotting from the tower's flat roof just below the observation deck. He's, I suspect, talking about the old tower, which is something of a monument at Heathrow. And I have a new one that looks like a pepper pot on a stick. I also went to LATCC, LATCC, which stands, I think, for London Air Traffic Control Centre at West Drayton. I've been there a lot, spending hours sitting on the radar consoles. I'm sure that would have upset the controllers a bit, because didn't you get in the way when they were trying to control if you were sitting on the radar consoles?
I would think so.
Yeah, I would have thought, get out of my console. Anyway, unfortunately, it didn't work out, as NATS closed Preston Northern Radar, and most of the controllers moved down to West Drayton, and it was then overstaffed for some time. And by the time I was accepted for air traffic control, I was in another career, and I chose not to change. Something I regret in some ways, but I would be dead by now, like most of the controllers who worked then. I'm sure some of them survived for a while. Apparently, slip discs from working on the 15-inch horizontal radar monitors. Yeah, can you imagine that? They had radars that were sort of they weren't in front of you like a screen. They were flat, and everyone had to lean over them. And you often had more than one controller working on the same radar scope. So everyone was sort of leaning in, bending over. I think
ergonomics were not optimum.
Yes. Apparently, these scopes, I'm going back a bit now, and this is me talking, had a tendency, if the power wasn't being maintained at a very high level, to shrink in size. And all the controls would have to lean in even further to try and see what was happening on this slightly smaller scale as everything shrank into the middle. And they'd bang heads eventually if they weren't careful. Anyway, from working, the horizontal radar monitors and having to write on flight slips or heart attacks from the stress level. Yeah, I'm sure it was very stressful. I don't know what time you were up in Scotland on the RF4s. An RF4 is a reconnaissance F4.
And you didn't do a reconnaissance, did you?
Well, that's an American term. The British called it an F4, and if it had a reconnaissance, it would have been an FGR1. So it would have been Fighter Ground Attack Reconnaissance Mark 1. We had an FGR2, so the RAF ones were capable of reconnaissance roles, and that was the FGR was for reconnaissance. But all the ones I flew weren't. But anyway, I used to listen on HF to the intercepts and plot positions on my maps, but that's another story. That's interesting. Wouldn't have happened with me. Our Phantom didn't have an HF radio, so only VHF, I'm afraid. Anyway, I was up in Scotland in the late 70s and again in the mid-80s. I found this attached article in Pilot magazine last December and thought you might find it of interest. Kind regards, David Moore. And I did look at this article. It tells a great story of this chap's flying career. And it's called An Unconventional Route from Pilot Profile. From pounding the beat to ferrying ostriches. Jimmy Tweedle's path into aviation and the 747 has taken a few interesting turns. So it's a lovely story of this pilot's long and interesting career. Thank you for sending the article. That's very kind of you. And I suppose I don't know if we'd be allowed to put it on the website where that's copyrighted or not. So I don't know.
I don't know. It kind of looks to me like he scanned it and put it in. Doesn't look like something that you would find. No. Maybe I'll do some work and see if it's something that you can
it was
find
only put out,
as
but
a PDF.
You could probably get a copy if you wanted to read it. It's the December 2019 article.
Relatively recent. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can, in fact, find them at pilotweb.aero. I think that's what it says.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll make sure before we include it in our show notes.
Yeah. Anyway, lovely to hear from you, David. Lovely to hear those stories. Very kind.
All right. Thank you, Nick. The next one from Chris. He said that he's enjoying the chapters and pictures while listening to the show on Apple Podcasts. He said, I'm a few episodes behind at the moment, but listening about the chapters and pictures and podcasts, so sorry if this is old news. This is how it shows in Apple CarPlay using the Apple Podcasts app. It's great being able to see the pictures of what each bit of the show is about and the title of the feedback, etc. Yeah, so there you go. You can put a little picture of his Apple CarPlay display while listening to the show. And in this case, I think we were doing our Getting to Know Us segment because it's a small little pic there, but I can kind of see the conglomeration of images that Nick put together for our Getting to Know Us overlay for that portion or segment of the show. So I'm glad you're enjoying it.
We're trying to do more of that. It's a bit of a job for you, Jeff, because you've got like a 3-hour show to put into chapters. For me on Plain Tales, it's a lot easier, but I'm trying to do it on Plain Tales as well.
Yeah, I have nothing else to do. So might as well.
Get a life, Jeff.
I'm trying. It's not the first time that somebody said that to me.
I love it.
Shet writes, "Hi crew, is very interested in the news story about the airplane that flew under the Mackinac Bridge. To answer a couple of your questions, yes, the bridge has been struck by an airplane in the past, resulting in the death of 3 Marine Corps Reserve officers. The paint on the bridge suffered minor scratches." Pretty beefy bridge.
Yeah, pretty strong.
The bridge is about 5 miles in length, 10 kilometers, and is designed like a wing to fly in the strong winds of the Mackinac Straits. It's pronounced Mackinac, never Mackinac. The rule of thumb is Mackinac is the French spelling, or Mackinac with a C is the French spelling used north of the bridge and including the bridge, whereas Mackinac with the W is the spelling used south of the bridge. Hope that helps you out there, Jeff. Apparently I need a lot of help lately. Thank you very much. With the help of Flight Radar 24, I think we can identify suspect number 1. And he's referring to the reason why we're even talking about the Mackinac Bridge was the single engine airplane that had flown underneath the span, the center span. And he's showing this picture from Flight Radar 24. And he thinks that he's identified the suspect. The time shown is UTC. This would be about 2:51 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Or I should say saving time. And if we blow it up a little bit, what does it say? November 118 Sierra Charlie. So that's who he thinks the perp is. The FAA makes the N number registry public on the internet, so even the crack investigative team at the Michigan State Police can look it up with plenty of time left to reach for that next donut. Ooh, that's kind of rude. Shet, come on. Hope that they don't pull you over for that one. Other fools have flown under the bridge on April 28th, 1959, and we talked about that on, I think, the last episode. Captain John Lapo decided to fly a B-47 bomber into the 155-foot...
That's a big piece of kit.
Space, yep, between the bridge deck and the water. It's unlikely he was carrying the traditional thermonuclear bomb load at the time. He was fined $300 to be paid monthly at $50 per month over a 6-month period, and was grounded until he retired. Today, the fine is reportedly closer to $28,000. Yeah. We talked about the John and how he decided to do it, and everybody was excited about it except the navigator, whose dad was the general. Oops. My bad. Well, thank you, Chet, for sending in more information about the Mackinac Bridge. I'll never, ever pronounce it Mackinac. Liz, how are we doing on time? Okay. Oh, we have time for some more feedback before we hit the plain tales. All right. Okay. Let's move to this one. This is a sad one, actually. This is Texas Charlie. He says, not the usual bit of fun that he likes to send us. Howdy, y'all. Normally I try to add a bit of fun to the show, but today I'm tackling one of my pet peeves, lack of respect for the cabin crew. If the attached picture of a note is real, I would fully support the airline tracking down the culprit and banning for life this person from the airline. And it turns out that they actually have found the person that wrote this real letter or note and have banned that person from, it was an American Airlines flight. Then as the originating airline, I would share the name of the passenger with all the other airlines and let each decide if that particular airline should follow suit. But then I'm sure the lawyers would object. A comment such as this from a passenger only reinforces my belief that the position of flight attendant should be renamed Security and Amenity Officer, and the uniform should be changed to elicit respect, similar to that of the cockpit crew, or at least a uniform that denotes a level of respect. You may need to censor the attached message, at least for the sake of civility. Adios all, Texas Charlie. And yeah, I cannot read this note verbatim because it would violate, I try to make this show a non-explicit podcast, And if I read the words and phrases in this note, we would have to slap an explicit rating on this episode. So we're not going to do that. But, and I'm sure most of you by now have heard about this, where the person that wrote the note on a air sickness bag, and in the middle of the air sickness bag, it says waste, W-A-S-T-E. And this person writes, apparently what happened is this passenger was given a warning by a flight attendant that this person needs to wear their mask correctly, their face mask, and they had it over their mouth, but not over their mouth and nose. And we all know that if it's not over both, then it's not really doing anything to keep stuff coming out of your mouth and nose. So apparently the flight attendant reminded the person that they needed to wear it properly, and the person objected to the flight attendant, pointing that out to them. And what do we do? We really don't want to get into all this, but the person is, you're nothing but a glorified maid who needs to jump down off her high horse and learn how to speak to people. Nobody cares about your stupid seat policies or your nose issues. We pay your salary, underlined, and your attitude is unnecessary. The very fact that we have to listen and kowtow to a nobody who does bleep except collect our trash and serve crappy food makes me absolutely ill. You are a mask Nazi and I can't even say any of that, a four-eyed something. And if it wasn't for this job, you would be cleaning motel rooms for $2 tips and meth. Wow, this person is not a nice person. I made sure to write this on a bag labeled as to what I think your life actually is: a waste. Warm regards. That's a little passive aggressiveness there. I recognize that. A person who hates your guts. So this is a troubled person who wrote this. And as mentioned, Charlie suggested that the airline find out who this was and ban them from their airline, and that's exactly what they did. And the only really thing that I can say about this whole thing is, where is the love? Where is the love? That's the Roberta Flack version of Where is the Love? Yeah, come on, where's the love, folks? Be nice, right? Don't you agree, Nick?
It's beyond some people, Jeff, and I despair a little, I'm afraid, because we don't need this in our lives.
No.
Certainly these lovely ladies and gents who work in the cabin and who have actually a pretty hard time of it most of the time don't need it. And the fact is that a lot of them are being made redundant. So, they may end up having to deal with a passenger like this, and then they may be losing their jobs on top of that. So,
yeah. Owen in our live audience says, I've heard rumors only that the cabin crew member to whom this was handed is a relatively junior category and won't get to keep her job as a result of the furloughs / layoffs. Wow.
Yeah. So I'd like to just turn this around somehow and fire it straight back at the person who wrote it, because they don't deserve really to be on this planet.
I have a feeling they felt like they were embarrassed because somebody had to tell them how to wear their mask or remind them to wear it properly. And they were so embarrassed that they took out their anger, I guess, and embarrassment on this poor flight attendant, which was completely unnecessary. Okay. People that listen to the show understand, that this is not the way you behave in a civilized society.
Certainly not.
All right. Well, let's move on to something cheerier. And Captain Phil sent some audio feedback regarding something that we talked about on an earlier show.
Hi, APG crew. This is Captain Phil from Minneapolis. I'm a CRJ captain for Acme SkyWest. I wanted to call in, so to speak, regarding the CRJ approach categories. Captain Jeff, you're right in speculating that the CRJ 200 is, in fact, a Category Delta aircraft. The aircraft lacks any leading edge devices, and at our max landing weight of 47,000 pounds, VREF is 141 knots, to which we add 5 knots. We then slow to VREF on short final, provided there are no gusts being reported. Incidentally, Miami Rick and Captain Nick, I'm assuming you probably carried more fuel than our max landing weight. Anyway, as for the CRJ 700, that is a Category Charlie aircraft straight in. However, for circling approaches, it is considered Category D. The CRJ 900, like the 200, is always a Category D as in Delta aircraft. Anyway, that's all I have for you. So blue skies, favorable winds, hot coffee, cold IPAs, smooth bourbon for Dana, and good health. Take care.
Awesome, Captain Phil. And good job of keeping the identity of your airline secret. I love that. Acme SkyWest. But yeah, we were talking about airplane approach categories on an earlier episode, and I surmised that the CRJ, at least the 200, would be in a Category D because of the very high approach speeds that they have. So interesting.
Certainly is. I'm learning more every day. Every day's a school day.
Yeah. Well, talking about learning things, man, I'm learning all kinds of things on this show, how dumb I am about certain things. But anyway, you'd think that approach categories would have something to do with, the size and weight of an airplane, but actually it is directly related to the speeds that the airplane is flying on approach and doing circling approaches and that kind of thing. And of course, then indirectly, the size of the airplane and the weight of the airplane will affect how high or low those speeds are. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, I think. Thank you, Captain Phil, for that. And thanks for all the well wishes, cold IPAs. I'm always up for that.
Yeah. The thing about this category, the thing that amazed me was that aircraft that going into the smaller airfields around the world, particularly in the States, because they're the smaller, lighter aircraft, they tend to go to these airports. Some of these airports don't have Category D approaches because of the speed of the approach of the aircraft, and that surprised me. So you've got relatively small aircraft like the BizJet we were talking about, the Gulfstream, no?
Yeah, Gulfstream. Yeah, Gulfstream 5 or 4.
Yeah,
Gulfstream 4. Yeah.
And this aircraft, they might be making approaches into airports where there's no actually a plated arrival for them to fly for their category of aircraft. And I just found that an interesting anomaly.
That is.
Yeah. So like the chap I was chatting to at Farnborough said, there are a lot of airfields where you can only make a visual approach. And I'm going, really?
Oh yeah. Graham Fig.
Yeah. Graham. Yeah.
Yeah. That is interesting. That I guess there's no way to legally fly an instrument approach to some of these airports.
And for those people who don't quite understand, some of the turns you make in a Category D aircraft, because you're flying faster, have a larger radius to them. So would take you, say, too far from the airfield or too close to a piece of high terrain. So you've got to fly the approach slower and make tighter turns. And you can't do that in a Category D aircraft because of the design of the airplane, the weight, the wing, whatever. It's flying faster, so it stays at a safe speed. And can't make those radius of turns. So you've got to figure something else out.
Yep. Guess you got to do what you got to do.
Or you cheat.
Yeah, you cheat, right.
None of us recommend that. Or
No.
You'll end up on one of our news items.
Yeah, so you don't want to do that because we'll ridicule you.
Yes, we will.
Steve in Pittsburgh, now this is a subject we never hear about. tongue in cheek. This may have been discussed already. Yeah, that's one of the hazards with our new listeners. This is episode number 442 that we're doing today. Chances are we have talked about your question in the past, and this is one that we have. But I understand if you're new to the show, you wouldn't necessarily know that. This may have been discussed already, as I'm a little behind and only just finished listening to episode 438 with the discussion of pilots learning to use a side stick with their non-dominant hand. I'm left-handed and drive a car with a manual transmission, which means I shift with my right hand. It feels perfectly natural and is not difficult in any way, and I had no trouble learning how to do it. All the trouble came from learning what to do with my left foot, even though that's my dominant side, which goes to show that there is a learning curve with any activity that requires a level of precision, even if a person is using their preferred hand or foot. In automotive forums where there's discussion of buying a right-hand drive car or left-hand drive if you're Nick, the question often comes up, is it strange to shift gears with your other hand? The usual answer is that you get used to it very quickly and have no trouble switching back when driving other cars. Since the type of motions needed for using a gear shifter and side stick are similar, I would imagine for any pilot with even a basic level of experience using a side stick with their non-dominant hand or even switching hands would also be similar, as discussed in the episode when relief pilots were mentioned. Tailwinds, clear skies, hazy IPAs, etc. Steve in Pittsburgh. And yes, he's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, Steve, I learned to drive on my father's old Mercedes, which was a left-hand drive Merc because he bought it in Germany. And then when I passed my test, I used to borrow my mum's Mini, which was a right-hand drive. So I was faced with the same problem. But I think when you're driving a car, it's slightly different in that, a lot of the activities like changing gear, they don't require fine motor skills. And that was the biggest problem I had shifting to flying with my left hand on a side stick, was that I could do everything to a reasonable level, but that really gentle, fine motor skill you needed to tweak the airplane, just to say in the flare phase or just touching the wheels on. It took me a little while to develop that gentle touch, those fine skills. That I could do everything else, in a ham-fisted way, but just that area took me a while to get used to it.
Well, very good. I'm sure that Steve, you're not the first to ask, and I'm sure you will not be the last. No. Thanks for covering it at least, or asking it so that we can cover it with them.
I'll put a quid on 6 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see. Mark that down in the book, Liz. That book that we keep for, I don't know.
Repetitive questions.
Yes.
See when they come around again.
Our betting book. Magnus sent this in. I'm sorry. Did I pick the wrong one? Oh, yeah, it's a video, I believe, Liz. And so why don't we hang off on that? I can't remember if it has audio or not. Okay. Magnus writes in. He says, thanks for a great podcast. In episode 441, you talked about air forces that use road bases. The Swedish Air Force is using road bases. When you are driving in the country in Sweden, you sometimes come across an extremely long and wide stretch of road. That's a runway. You also see closed off roads running off into the forest. That's taxiways to the maintenance hangars. Here's an old video from the mid-'80s featuring the Saab JA-37 Viggen using road bases somewhere in Sweden. So without...
I love it. They've got a follow me motorcycle.
This is nice.
I love that Viggen with those canards.
Oh yeah, very good looking airplane.
Yeah.
Oh wait, we're talking over the narration here.
Yeah,
but
he's speaking in Swedish.
I know, so we can't understand what he's saying. But for our Swedish listeners out there, Nick.
Yeah, that's very true.
Very rude of
they're
us.
growing those trees very fast.
So,
fastest growing trees in Sweden.
we'll have a link to the video in the show notes. We were saying we love the music, and I actually kind of do like that music.
Yeah, it features in a lot of naughty videos that Sweden were famous for producing as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
How would you know?
Recognize it.
Anyway, it showed the Vigan kind of going off onto one of these smaller roads, taxiways, and then kind of ducks right into this little area. And then they have trees that are obviously not real trees that are on some kind of dolly or whatever that they quickly use to cover up the gap in the roadway and hide the airplane. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That Vigan was a super looking piece of kit, I always thought.
Yeah, I thought so too. Very, very fast looking airplane. All right. Well, Liz tells us that this is perfect timing for this week's installment of the Old Pilot's Plane Tales. And this one is entitled Little Nellie and Her Friends.
The Old Pilot's Plane Tales. Little Nellie and Her Friends. Little Nellie was a rare breed of aviatrix, the name of which has its origins in ancient Greek. Scholars have suggested that the first part comes from the word av, meaning back, again, and other, but it also relates to the Phrygian autos, meaning self, and the second part, eros, which possibly comes from the Sanskrit goal for circle. From eros we get gyros, which refers to the brim of a hat, a walk, a bypass or lap, but also something round, or a movement in a circle. Thus, in more modern parlance, we have the more familiar autogyro, literally meaning self-turning. Flying an autogyro is a novel form of taking to the air, but something of a niche sport that is practiced by a few devotees, often because of the ability to land in very short distances. This was ably demonstrated by postman Doug Hughes. Now, Doug had a beef with Congress about campaign financing, and he wanted to deliver 535 letters, one for each serving congressman, in a way that might generate a little publicity. He was seen flying a few hundred feet off the ground along the National Mall from the Washington Monument before demonstrating the short landing capability of his autogyro by plunking it down on the west lawn of the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. a few years back. He somehow managed to avoid the considerable air defenses that are present to protect the U.S. government and threw the Capitol building into a lockdown. Hughes pleaded guilty to several offences. He faced a possible 3 years in jail and a $250,000 fine, but pled down to 120 days in prison and a year of probation. He was fired from his job as a mailman, but successfully appealed the decision and was reinstated. In the last few weeks of his show, David Letterman asked President Obama what the top 10 dumbest questions that he had ever been asked whilst in office were. Number 1 was apparently the errant autogyro pilot purportedly asking, "When will you return my gyrocopter?" The autogyro has a number of different names, presumably for those not familiar with ancient Greek, and is commonly known as a gyroplane, gyrocopter, and sometimes a Benson. The inventor of this unusual flying machine was the first Count of La Cierva, Juan de la Cierva Cardonio. De la Cierva was a pretty clever chap, a civil engineer with a talent as an inventor. He had been interested in flight since he was a teenager. In 1918, he built conventional, for the time that is, fixed-wing aircraft and the world's first trimotor. Its crash a year later after a stall convinced him that aviation safety called for stall-proof aircraft that could make steep takeoffs and landings safely at slow speeds. After tossing a toy model rotorcraft out of his parents' bedroom, he began experimenting with rotating wing aircraft in 1920 and developed the Autogyro as a more stable form of flying machine. I'm guessing that we all know what a helicopter looks like, but not everyone will understand how an autogyro, although superficially similar in looks, works. The early versions resembled tail-wheeled aircraft fuselages. For example, an early version used the fuselage of a Sommer monoplane. They had a tractor, referring to the propeller type that pulls as opposed to a pusher, engine at the front, but lacked wings. In place of the wings, there was a central shaft sticking up from near the centre of gravity, upon which were mounted large rotor blades, like those on early helicopters. The rotor blades weren't powered, but rotated freely around. The way they work is the same way as a seed from a tree like a sycamore flies. The seed's wing, or the autogyro's blades, auto-rotate. Simply said, the wind pushing against them gives them the power to turn. Once they build up enough rotational speed, they also produce lift in the same way as an aerofoil does. For the falling sycamore seed, it merely slows the descent. But with an engine to give forward speed, the autogyro can easily build up enough speed to overcome its weight and fly. For those with sufficient interest, the more complicated version is this. As the aircraft is moving forward, the rotor is mounted in such a way that the plane of rotation is at a slight angle to the direction the aircraft's moving in. It tilts back, as opposed to helicopter rotors which tilt forward to make progress. Any wind passing over an aerofoil will create both lift and drag. The lift will be perpendicular to the airflow, and the drag will be parallel to the airflow. This is true for all aerofoils, not just for the rotor of an autogyro. When the lift and drag vectors are added together, they create a resultant force. In auto-rotation, this resultant force is in front of the axis of rotation, so in addition to providing lift, it also pulls the rotor forward. Simple, really. Out of interest, since the relative wind needs to turn the rotor disc, due to the aircraft's forward movement, it goes up through the rotor instead of down as it would in a helicopter. Confused yet? Trust me, it works. How the young first Count worked all this out is an indication of his genius, but he had some problems as well. His first efforts, the Sierra C1, 2 and 3, weren't successful and got little past a fast taxi or just getting a few inches into the air. He discovered a major problem in his initial rotor design. The blades were all set at a fixed angle. This was fine for the blades that were advancing forward into the airflow, as they made lots of lift, but the other ones, the retreating blades, didn't. This meant that one side of the rotor disc was flying much better than the other, which caused a big imbalance and a big problem. To cure this asymmetry, where the blades joined the central hub, the Count fitted hinges that allowed the blades to flap, smoothing out the variations in lift. With that problem sorted out, in January 1923, flown by Alejandro Gomez Spencer, the C4 became the first autogyro to fly. Aviation would never be the same again. Well, it would, actually, but the autogyro was a good first step on the road to the development of the noisiest, most horrible flying machine ever to take to the air by beating it into submission, the helicopter. But that's another story. The C4 flew, and it very quickly demonstrated the quality that our Count was counting on. Only 3 days after its first flight, in a steep climb, shortly after takeoff, the engine failed. Now, a conventional aircraft would almost certainly have stalled and plunged into the ground, but instead, the Autogyro descended gently downwards, without damage or injury to the courageous Alejandro Gomez Spencer. Before long, with financial help from the Spanish military aviation establishment, the Count had built his 6th Autogyro, imaginatively named the C6, and one of their pilots flew it the 6.5 miles between 2 airfields in 8 minutes, which, by my reckoning, was considerably less than 1 mile a minute, but a significant achievement for the rotorcraft of the time. The Scottish industrialist James Weir learned of de la Sierra's achievements and asked him to create a company in England to build more of the machines. Before long, a new C6 was demonstrating in front of the British Air Ministry at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, Farnborough, and Britain then became the world's centre of Autogyro development. Improvements were made to the blade flap hinge, which included some fore and aft movement to ease stress, and this was incorporated in the C8 version, which also became the first rotorcraft to cross the English Channel. Then the US industrialist Harold Pitcairn visited England, and after being taken airborne for a test flight, which included a safe auto-rotation descent to a gentle landing, was greatly impressed. He purchased a C8 powered by a Wright Whirlwind engine and took it back to the States, where it was produced under license by a number of manufacturers, and also by Focke-Wulf in Germany. One area that needed improvement in the design was the reduction in ground run for takeoff. The rotor needed to be started turning by hand before takeoff, but it took quite a while before the forward speed spanned the blades up enough to allow flight. The next step was to devise a way of accelerating the rotor prior to takeoff, which would dramatically shorten the run required. Various methods were used, from a simple rope wrapped around the shaft and pulled by a team of men, then horses, and finally a motor car, but none made the Autogyro self-sufficient. Our Count tried deflecting the propeller slipstream upwards through the rotor, and then the machine's own engine was coupled to a shaft which drove the rotors. Initially developed by Pitcairn in America, this method was eventually adopted in later versions of the Count's machines. I think we can all see where the Autogyro was headed, but its passage into a true helicopter capable of sustained hovering was still a way off, but at least the new system allowed them to get the Autogyro into the air vertically. They called it a jump takeoff, and it required the blades to be spun up to as high a speed as possible, which then allowed it to lift off, and then before the speed of the rotor fell away, the pilot would transition quickly to forward flight. Improvements were also being made to the design of the rotor hub, which allowed tilt to the rotors, doing away with the need for a conventional tail section. Now the pilot had one control for pitch and roll, and a bar moved by the feet for yaw, although having a freewheeling rotor meant there was no need for a tail rotor. A simple rudder served. The way was now open for the first helicopters, and it was the Russian Central Aerohydrodynamic Institute who may have made the first tentative steps in 1932 with the TS-AGI-1EA, followed by the French company Breguet Dorand and the German Focke-Wulf company the following year. Helicopters are, though, a different story, as we want to know about Little Nellie. As aircraft and helicopters developed, the Autogyro fell somewhere between them. It wasn't as quick as a fixed-wing aircraft, nor as streamlined, so consumed more fuel. It was quicker than a helicopter, but lacked the flexibility to hover and maneuver within tight spaces. Although some were made for military use in both world wars, they were pretty much sidelined. However, both the Germans and Japanese made a version to fly from submarines, the Soviets used them for artillery spotting, and the RAF used some to calibrate their coastal radar stations during the Battle of Britain. As interest moved away from this odd little niche machine, they still held a place in the heart of many enthusiasts, and the design was optimized into a lightweight frame of metal tubing supporting a pusher engine, which allowed greater visibility from a partly enclosed bullet-shaped cockpit. The rotor design was modernized and materials improved so that it became very, very safe, flexible, and a fun way to take to the air. The leaders in the modernization of the Autogyro were people like Igor Benson, a Russian immigrant to the US who developed a small single-seat version for the US military, whilst in the United Kingdom, a rather eccentric former RAF wing commander built similar designs which were used by police forces, in military training, and in the search for the Loch Ness Monster. Wallace became a leading exponent of the Autogyro and earned 34 world records. He had joined the Air Force during the war, despite cheating at his eye test, flew operational missions in Lysanders and Wellington bombers before being seconded to the U.S. Strategic Air Command, where he flew the enormous Convair B-36 Peacemaker. Wallace's chief claim to fame was to appear in a James Bond movie, You Only Live Twice, flying his Wallace WA-116 Agile, which was named Little Nellie, after the legendary music hall performer Nellie Wallace. Why he thought the noisy buzzing and flapping of Little Nellie made him think of the music hall performer is not made clear. During the movie, he flew Little Nellie through a series of semi-aerobatic maneuvers with great panache, buzzing buildings, in and out of a volcano, and finally destroying 4 of Blofeld's armed Bell 47 helicopters with rear-facing flamethrowers, parachute mines, machine guns, rockets, and over-the-shoulder launched air-to-air missiles, all fired from neat buttons marked by a 1970s plastic Dymo label maker.
Hello, Base 1. Listening. Little Nellie got a hot reception. 4 big shots made improper advances towards her, but she defended her honor with great success. Heading for home.
Listening to the dialogue today, I have no doubt there were a few who winced. Not exactly classic Bond. There have been a few developments of the Autogyro, but none that have really caught on. Some very smart, fully enclosed versions have been made, one of which, the Green Hawk 4, 4-seater, was used to patrol Salt Lake International Airport during their Winter Olympics. Another fascinating development of the Autogyro principle was the Fairy Rotodyne. Aimed at being an airport transfer and intercity transport, this remarkable aircraft could seat up to 48 passengers. The production version would carry over 60, and was a combination tip-jet-powered rotorcraft with a short fixed wing upon which there were 2 conventional Napier turboprop engines. For vertical takeoff and landing, the tip jets, powered by air bled from the engines mixed with fuel, would spin the rotors, but once in forward motion, powered by the Napiers, they could be shut down and the rotor would auto-rotate, relying on the forward speed. The short wings held the forward thrust engines and aided by providing additional lift. For landing, the rotor jets would be restarted, allowing the aircraft to hover in a way not possible in a conventional autogyro.
Tower from Rotodyne, take off clearance, please. Rotodyne from tower, you're clear to go. Roger. Rotodyne taking off now.
The concept had many advantages, including its high-speed cruise of 200 knots and the simplicity of control, as unlike a helicopter, it didn't need a tail rotor. There's no doubt that it would have made a very safe way to fly, but the real problem was the noise of those rotor jets fixed to the blade tips. The test pilot, John Farley, said of it, "From 2 miles away it would stop a conversation. I mean, the noise of those little jets on the tips of the rotor was just indescribable. So, what have we got? The noisiest hovering vehicle the world has yet to come up with, and you're going to stick it in the middle of a city? Stick it in the middle of a city. Stick it in the middle of a city. Stick it in the middle of a city."
I love that music.
It's real elevator music, isn't it? But perfect for that era, I thought.
I think I'm just living in the wrong era. I love that Rotodyne. I think we've talked about that on the show before, and the fact that it was like really super noisy.
Yeah, apparently. But apparently, Fairy said that they would be able to develop some kind of exhaust muffler for it, reduce the noise. But I don't think it was really going to be feasible. Although, it nowadays, if you think about it, an Autogyro consumes less fuel than a lot of types of transport. But yeah, nice idea, though. I mean, combining 3 different types of airplane, the helicopter, the Autogyro, and the conventional airplane.
What could possibly go wrong?
Exactly. It's a bit like Thunderbirds, I thought.
Wow. Well, that was interesting. I've always thought that the Autogyro vehicle was an interesting one, and that helped me understand how, the physics behind how it all works.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought too much about it till I looked into it, and then I went, of course, yes, you've got to have air going up through the rotor disc. Hang on a minute. If air goes up through the rotor disc, how does it make lift?
Yeah.
So get your mind around that bit.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, thank you very much for the plain tale. As always, we really enjoy it here. And
I love it.
With that, I think that we're going to go ahead and end part 1, and then stay tuned for the next part. Hopefully we'll be joined by Miami Rick and possibly Dr. Steph again. So
I hope so. Good luck with question 9.
You had to pimp me on that one.
Yeah,
huh?
I did, didn't I?
Jerk. Liz says there's going to be a test, Jeff.
Well, brilliant. Well, have a great second half of the show, and it's going to be 2:00 in the morning here, so you definitely.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and call you about 1:30 to get you up and splash some water on your face so you can join us.
Yeah, no. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm retired. Us old age pensioners, we need our rest.
And as far as number 9 is concerned, we have not yet covered that feedback yet.
Oh, so, yeah, the magic number 9 will be redone.
Yeah, that'll be something that we've never seen before or never addressed. And I will sit here just very quietly while Steph and Rick talk about critical engines. And I hopefully learn something.
Don't forget to mention to Steph that the disc needs to be at an angle of attack to the airflow before there is a difference in lift from one side to the other.
Well, I will not say a thing. You'll have to text that to her.
Okay.
And I've already apologized to her for messing up her. And she was also under a lot of pressure because her battery level was continuing to
talk faster
descend very quickly, and she was thinking, I got to get all this in before my Surface tablet dies, and
brilliant.
Not a good performance there by myself. Sorry.
Well,
okay,
you'll be on later, so I need really to say goodbye to you and everyone else that's in the chat room, because I'll catch you guys next week.
All right, very good. Looking forward to that. And for those of you who are in the chat room and are able to join us for part 2. We look forward to seeing you. And if not, then we'll see you again, hopefully next week. And by the way, it'll be a different
show
video. Yeah, different show with new hosts and completely different format. Yeah, and nothing at all about aviation.
No.
So anyway, I'll end the broadcast, and then I'll go ahead and start setting up the next event or whatever for Facebook and YouTube, so that people can join us later on. All
okay,
right, here we
brilliant.
go.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.